Hey listeners, our show is now available on Google Play Music. Download the Google Play Music app on your smartphone or go to play.google.com/music and search for us, the 1P versus 2P podcast, to stream and subscribe to our episodes. Check it out. Starfox returns for the first time in nearly a decade with Starfox Zero. A brain implant and a Guitar Hero controller is advancing neuroscience. And an industry veteran calls game developers' work just, quote, pushing a mouse. All that plus more today, Tuesday, April 19th, 2016. You're listening to the 1P versus 2P podcast. I'm Taylor Ray. With me, as always, is my brother and co-host, Ryan Ray. Let's begin with
First Attack.
Let's go over the top stories in the world of gaming from this past week. Let's start off with this quote. If you're looking to read a dark tale of deception, greed, betrayal, and intimidation, then you should get stuck into Leslie Benzie's lawsuit against former partners Dan Houser and Sam Houser, the bosses of Grand Theft Auto House Rockstar Games. End quote. What I just read, that's the first paragraph of a Polygon story about a new legal battle over profit sharing and a jilted former Rockstar North studio head on a sabbatical. Ryan, what are both sides of this lawsuit arguing about?
Well, let me give a little bit of background to start off with. So this all comes from a report that Kotaku ran back in January saying that Leslie Benzies had left Rockstar North back in January, allegedly to go on a sabbatical, and had decided to not return to work for the company when he came back. And the one side, Benzies, is painting a more complicated version of that story. In a press release announcing a lawsuit against his former employer, he says that he was enticed by Rockstar to take a sabbatical after the launch of Grand Theft Auto V. And during that time, he reportedly discovered that there was a lot of lying to his face going on designed to push him out of the company and deny him royalty payments that he was due to the tune of about $150 million. So Benzies had this royalty payment system set up with both the Houser brothers as part of the arrangement when Take-Two acquired Rockstar back in 2008. It seems like both the Houser brothers were making moves to remove Benzies from the arrangement by basically forcing him to go on leave. When he came back, he tried to get back into the building. The company said, "We don't want you here." This is all stuff that Benzies allegedly put in the lawsuit against Rockstar. And Rockstar has fired back. They have countersued, claiming that Benzies isn't owed any additional money because he has committed a breach of contract. So it's just a very, very complicated issue. It seems like this lawsuit is kind of turning into its own Grand Theft Auto story, and we're not going to know what the outcome of this is until they actually go to court.
Well, it's interesting because you don't really hear too much about Rockstar Games or Rockstar North or any of the other studios. Also from Take-Two, you don't hear a lot about the business side of things in general. And this is kind of a peek into like what goes on. And there are rumors and sort of stories that haven't been well publicized, supposedly allegedly, I should say, about the studio, about the developer. It's interesting to see that like an ex-employee is getting treated like this. This could be like a he said, she said scenario. Like it seems like there's not a lot of agreement on like what the sabbatical was about, when he was going to come back to work. And I think it's especially amplified when it comes to Rockstar Games and how secretive they are in general. They don't talk about these things. They don't talk about, I just to coin a phrase here, and this is not intended to be a pun, they're rock stars in their own house. So this is interesting. We should definitely follow this story to see if it'll continue in court or it's going to be settled. It'll be interesting to see like what things come out of like the depositions by both parties.
To me, this seems like a creative differences kind of bearing out. The Houser brothers are kind of known for having this very hands-on approach to game development. They are very responsible for the kind of satirical tone of the Grand Theft Auto games. And I think for me, that part of the game is probably its weakest element. I think the more interesting thing about the Grand Theft Auto games has been the open world gameplay, the kind of like randomness that game kind of encourages. And that part is really left up more to people like Mr. Benzies. and of course, programmers. The Hauser brothers are kind of more the like, let's call them like the radio shock jock DJ kind of studio heads, or that's what it seems like. We've heard a lot of stories over the years about stuff that's gone on at Rockstar, and it just sounds so wild. And I'm sure the emails and evidence that's going to be presented at trial, if they go to trial, is just going to be wild. There's already been a couple of choice quotes, and I want to read you one here quickly. So this is, of course, both the Hauser brothers and Benzies worked on Red Dead Redemption, which is a fantastic game. Allegedly, 8 weeks before Red Dead Redemption was scheduled to come out, it was supposedly a very buggy mess, and Benzies was kind of known as being kind of a fixer, a man who'd really like bring together a team and try to get everything at the projects tightened up. So this is from an email that Sam Hauser wrote to Benzies, pleading for him to help with Red Dead Redemption. He says, quote, "This Red Dead Redemption is a recurring nightmare, but one we need to get out of. I have problems with camera all over the place, so much so that I can't be rational or specific about it. The darkness. Please help us get Red Dead Redemption into shape. I'm a jabbering wreck right now. I need the bends."
This is like all like there's like terrible punctuation in this email, right? Like there's a bunch of stuff like it's not grammatically correct, and it seems like super frazzled, like put together wildly, right?
It reads like dialogue from a Grand Theft Auto game. That's which is like it's really crazy. It's like reality meets art, right? So we'll see how this turns out. This is really wild. I am just gonna sit back with a bag of popcorn and watch this play out.
It's definitely like an interesting story to follow, so maybe we'll revisit this on down the line. And it's interesting also because Rockstar also issued a statement, like this is just general procedure when these lawsuits happen, like these contentious things. They said that, quote, "Leslie Benzies was a valued employee of our company for many years. Sadly, the events that culminated in his resignation ultimately stem from his significant performance and conduct issues." So shots fired right there. Also, this last line, quote, "His claims are entirely without merit and in many instances downright bizarre, and we are very confident this matter will be resolved in our favor," end quote. Wow, like it does not get any more heated than that. And we're talking about millions of dollars here. We're talking about greed between executives. So it's about to get nasty. Yeah, get your popcorn. Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next story. Let's talk about more about behind the scenes work in the games industry. And this got the internet fired up. Let's talk about a story that was run on VentureBeat. There's this game industry veteran called Alex St. John, and he published an article arguing that today's game developers should stop whining about, quote, fair wages, end quote, whatever that means. So this guy, St. John, he is one of the co-creators of the DirectX technology for Microsoft. This is middleware. It's like a driver that helps power a lot of PC and console games. He also founded a game company called Wild Tangent, and he wrote in this piece that, quote, "Making games is not a job, it's an art," end quote. And because of that ideology, he's saying that game developers should really stop worrying about whether their salaries are decent enough or their hours are standard compared to other full-time jobs. And like I said before, he also literally wrote in quotes in his piece, all they're doing is pushing a mouse. Wow, wow, wow. So Ryan, what's the reaction behind this? What do you think about this?
Man, I totally disagree with this guy's point of view. This just screams like bad idea that you should have really kept to yourself. He's, of course, addressing a major issue in the games industry and in a lot of other working life industries. He's, of course, referring to game industry crunch when you have to stay late at work and put in about 80 hours a week to get a thing done. And that's not normal. You know, a full-time job is about 40 hours a week. And a lot of people, it's really hard for them to get through that. I myself work 37 and a half hours a week. And some weeks that's more intense than others. You know, sometimes I have to do 12, 14-hour days, and some days I have 8-hour days. Regardless of whatever you think of that, that's a lot of time to take away from your family, to actually put a lot of creative juice into the products and games that you're trying to make. And when you're doing that, you're really running the risk of really burning people out. there are a lot of people in the games industry, I think, who suffer from a lot of depression, anxiety issues, a lot of mental health things because their employers, their the game companies responsible for paying for all these game developers really overwork them. And we don't have a lot of good labor unions or a lot of workplace rules that really, encourage the health and well-being of people in the games industry. But honestly, like most of the workforce around the world these days are a lot of intelligence workers, people who have office jobs. Like how work works is so much different than probably what this guy perceives as hard work.
Like, there's a lot to disagree with here. And it's interesting because it almost seems hypocritical because he's even admitted that, like, back in the 90s, he got super burnt out. He would fall asleep on his keyboard. Like, he described all these, like, negative aspects about working for Microsoft back in the day. And, like, he felt relieved, like, leaving them and working on games by himself, like, and starting a new studio. So it's interesting to hear this. Doesn't he think that people today share those same experiences? Like, have things changed? Yes, the industry has evolved so much so. Like, there are so many, studios out there, AAA developers, and there are teams, and the cost of making games is like in the millions of dollars, and even beyond just making the creative aspects about any given video game. It sounds really tough. And for us as podcasters discussing about the video game industry, I feel like we're just armchair critics and we're not on the inside. We don't see what it's like, but based on what we've heard from other developers and people reacting to this editorial, he's not painting like an accurate picture of what things should be. People should be paid well, then they should be treated with dignity and respect. 80-hour work weeks sounds unreasonable. I don't care what industry you're working for.
I mean, come on, have some empathy for your fellow game developer. And today he's kind of doubled down on those comments in a series of posts on the website defending his article. He says, quote, "It's really interesting how important it is to these folks to pretend that making successful games isn't always hard work, and that people who do it professionally are still surprised that the expectation of hard work is already priced into their salaries when they took the job." Come on, man.
Yeah, what is his mission here? What was he looking to accomplish with this? Is he trying to defend, like, maybe his studio employs others? I'm not even sure, to be exact, but, like, I don't know. Is he trying to defend his own business practices? Like, it seems like this weird out of left field thing, and maybe it was like a clickbait thing that he just wants to get attention. Like, I don't understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. This, if I was working for this guy or working alongside this guy, I would maybe consider updating my resume.
Well, didn't you say that he put out like this slide deck, or maybe this was leaked, that he was supposed to be speaking at some conference? What was that about? You were telling me about that earlier.
So the game developer community, understandably, had a very violent backlash against this article, and they uncovered through some internet sleuthing this recruitment slideshow that he did a while back. And let me just read you a choice highlight from this, highlight in quotes, because this is definitely not a view that we want to espouse. He says, quote, "Be on the lookout for the Holy Grail, the undiscovered Asperger's engineer." Come on, man. Like, that is just like the grossest thing to like put out in a recruitment video. He also espouses some views in that slideshow, with negative views about women and how when you recruit engineers for game development that you're really recruiting their wives and girlfriends. Like, that's like really gross, sexist, like a 90s attitude towards things. And we've talked about, this is the third week in a row we've talked about this specific issue, and it's so frustrating to see it resurface time and time again with these kinds of attitudes. It's just really backwards.
Unbelievable. He's arguing that you're employing like a family and you should completely ignore this work-life balance of an employee in their personal lives. Like, he's justifying like the bad treatment of like low-level employees. It's just mind-boggling to me. This guy is going to get blacklisted in the industry for sure. Just watch out. Yeah. All right, enough about the news. Let's go on to this week's new releases.
I love new releases.
All right, moving on to Nintendo and Star Fox Zero, bundled with Star Fox Guard on Wii U. It's available on the 22nd, that's this Friday. This is the 6th Star Fox game and the first original one since 2007. That was Star Fox Command on the DS. Since then, there was also that 3DS Star Fox 64 re-release. And this is probably the closest we're getting to the Star Fox 64 experience, right, Ryan?
Right. It's this game's going to have branching paths based on how you do level to level. And on the Wii U, there's an option to aim more precisely with a cockpit view on the gamepad. And back at E3, they said this was going to be mandatory motion controls, much like Splatoon was. But Nintendo seems to have backed away from that. They're making it an optional control mode, which I think is really great. I think the motion controls can go one of two ways, either really poorly implemented or really well implemented. Judging from some feedback from some early previews, it seems like this was one of the bad examples. So I'm glad that that's an option for players. I'm really excited. I really like the Star Fox games. They're kind of arcade space shooters. Really a lot of fun characters, a lot of really funny, meme-tastic voice acting in these games. And it's one of these like arcade space shooters that's really, really fun.
And it's interesting that this game is also packaged with Star Fox Guard, and it's a tower defense game, which we haven't seen in the series. You're going to play as Slippy Toad with a new character, his uncle Grippy Toad, and you defend your base with robots. So it's this pack-in, but I think you have to pre-order the game in order to get both of them. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, you'll pre-order if you get the game digitally. I don't think you'll get Star Fox Guard, but Nintendo is making Star Fox Guard available separately as an eShop download. And for you, Taylor, both games will have Fox and Falco amiibo support. I know you've been waiting to use your amiibos.
Yeah, no. I've kept them all closed, and I don't think they're going to read through the packaging. So, like, I guess I think I've read before that if you use the Falco amiibo, you get like a black R-Wing, which actually seems pretty sweet. So that'll be pretty cool lately. But yeah, let's check it out. Let's see the reviews coming out for Star Fox Zero, because like you said, during the previews back then, people have been sort of mixed about it. Like they're disappointed, but I'm hopeful. If it's more Star Fox 64, I think that's a positive. But hopefully it won't go backward, and it will be some intuitive controls on the Wii U. Next, I know you're excited about this one, Ryan. I'll let you take it away. This is Banner Saga 2 on PC.
Right. We've talked about this game before on our show, and I'll just briefly say that this is the sequel follow-up to the Banner Saga. This is kind of a Viking Nordic Oregon Trail style game with tactical combat.
Yeah, it's like a tactics RPG for sure.
Yeah, and what they're saying for this game is that the choices from the PC Mac version will carry over, though judging from how the game played out, that will result in a slightly different cast of characters you're going to play with. There are some characters who left your party, came back, some characters whose lives changed forever. A lot like kind of Telltale's Walking Dead series. Some choices that you make really impact the plot of the game. And so I'm really interested to see how those will play out. I really enjoyed the first Mana Saga. You can get it on heavily discounted these days. And if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. The first one, I believe, is also available on iPad, iOS, and Android. So I'd highly recommend that if you're a tactics fan.
Yep, that's where I played it on iOS, and the touch controls weren't that bad. These grid-based tactics RPGs, I think, are perfect for that platform. So I don't think they've announced the mobile versions yet for this game, but so I think they're going to work on putting out the PC version first, and maybe we'll see those ports announced. So if you were a fan of that, and I think that was a successful Kickstarter game from before. Was this one Kickstarted?
I'm not sure if the sequel was Kickstarted, but the first one definitely was.
It's really, really a stunning piece of work. At least the first one was. We'll see how this one is.
And has an amazing soundtrack to boot.
Well, speaking of beautiful games, let's move on to our new game announcements.
Here comes a new challenger!
We've known about this game for a while. It's not a new announcement, but we have an update about Mirror's Edge, one of my personal favorites. Stunning game, really, of last generation. This is Mirror's Edge Catalyst. And let's talk about this because there's a beta coming this week. It's a sequel to like a game that wasn't really a best-selling hit, but I think it was critically acclaimed. I think it was important for EA And fans have been wanting this kind of game for a while, I have to say. Like this, it's this free running, like stunning first person experience. And this is interesting because instead of it just being a single player campaign with some time trial modes mixed in, this one is completely open world. There's an ability progression, but it's locked behind like missions. Like you have to beat certain missions to unlock basic abilities. So if you think about things like the original Assassin's Creed or Metal Gear Solid 5, in order to fight back against some enemies, there's some interesting mechanics here that were not locked behind some walls in the original.
Right. The original game was kind of this linear experience. You moved from level to level. The first half of the game was kind of tutorializing you, and then the last half of the game was kind of testing your limits. You know, the open world design kind of lends itself more to this ability progression thing. They're obviously trying to incentivize you to do the side missions in order to unlock new abilities, but that makes sense in a game kind of like Just Cause 3, where that there's going to be a double jump, a grapple hook, a jetpack upgrade. In Mirror's Edge, where the game is really more about the beauty of movement, locking, say, like a slide or a jump, like it was like a Super Metroid game, that's kind of a questionable design decision. We're going to kind of see how that plays out in the beta. And this game isn't that far off. This game is coming out in May, towards the end of May. So I'm not sure why you have a beta for a single player game exactly, but maybe they're just trying to see if there's going to be any fan feedback, and maybe they'll push back the release of the game. I'm not sure, but this progression mechanic doesn't seem very popular based on some early tweets that we saw this past weekend.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these tweets right here now. So some of the features that we were talking about that's locked behind your progression includes like an XP system to unlock some just basic parkour moves like raising your legs and quick turns. And these are things that you get right from the start from the original. So people are complaining on Twitter that it's ruining the hype for this game, that they shouldn't have even announced this pre-release. But people are going to discover this stuff in the beta, so I don't know what they're complaining about from that aspect. So it all depends on how quickly, in my opinion, you unlock the stuff. If it's not available quickly, people are going to get frustrated that people are going to complain that it's deviating way too far from the original as like this minimalistic, free-flowing gameplay that controlled amazingly well, and to some extent could give you some sort of motion sickness with the head bobbing and you sprinting and jumping off of walls. It was an incredible, incredible point of view as you played the original. So I look to see more of that in 2, but a lot of people are reacting very negatively so far on these new announcements by EA. So stay tuned for the beta this week, and then it'll drop, like Ryan said, late in May. Okay, Ryan, I'm going to let you take away this next one because I don't know much about the series at all. Shin Megami Tensei 4 Final is going to come to North America this summer as Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse.
So basically, this is a totally new 3DS game that is set in the same world as 2013's Shin Megami Tensei 4, which was released on 3DS a few years ago. And it tells kind of a different story from that game. Let me just say up front that if you really like the Persona style of combat, that's basically what this game is. It's a dungeon crawler, very difficult kind of game. You play as these characters in this academy, and you try to recruit demons and monsters on your side to kind of go deeper and deeper into this dungeon until eventually you find kind of the underworld, and the underworld is kind of this like backwards version of Tokyo. It's a very neat game, very, very difficult, like I said, and very interesting. It has a lot of really cool art aesthetics, has a great soundtrack. And I'm curious to see that this director's cut is basically coming to the West. This doesn't happen all that often with these kind of really niche titles.
Well, also, it's noteworthy that it's a 3DS game and it's going to be $50. Atlas has done this kind of thing before as a publisher where they're priced, their games so high, like even Vita games as well. It's higher than like typical games that you'd see on the platform. It's interesting. Like, isn't Persona 5 coming out this summer as well?
Yeah, it's allegedly sometime this year, but we haven't heard anything besides that trailer that they saw. I think that's the game that more people are interested in, honestly, but we haven't heard a peep about that. I think Atlas might be trying to signal that they may be delaying that game, but we don't know anything about Persona 5 yet.
But from what I know about Shin Megami is that there are a lot of side stories, just like Persona, direct, numbered games in that series aren't necessarily sequels. But this one that we're talking about, Apocalypse, is technically a sequel, though, right? From what I understand about this teaser.
Correct. Yeah, there were a few 3DS Shin Megami Tensei games like Devil Summoner, Devil Hacker. There was on PS2, there were a bunch of SMT spin-offs. This franchise has a ton of games in it, and if I tried to list them all off, I'd bore you to death.
And last but not least, we've got one more game. It's from the DayZ creators. They've unveiled a new shooter strategy game called Out of Ammo, which is available now on Steam Early Access.
Yeah, so this game is basically a VR experience available on the HTC Vive, exclusively for the Vive. And it's being described as a VR strategy game. Part that, part shooter. It has kind of this stylized, blocky aesthetic based on the trailer that we saw. And you're going to be able to take on waves of enemy soldiers. Maybe sounds like a horde mode. A lot of deploying defenses and issuing orders and possessing units to assume direct control. So maybe a hybrid shooter strategy tower defense style game. A neat concept for VR. There are already some of those kinds of games on VR already.
Definitely going after that Minecraft, that Ace of Spades, blocky style graphics money. That's exactly what this game is. Let's talk about something positive in the news story. Let's move on to our GG segment. GG brought to you by our friends at ggbutton.com. Good game to the neuroscientists behind a new paralysis study at the Feinstein Institute for Medical Research. They've helped this paralyzed man with a brain implant that lets him move his fingers to play a Guitar Hero controller and play like a clone of Guitar Hero called Frets on Fire. It's really inspiring stuff. This is a guy who's a quadriplegic who had a spinal cord injury after a diving accident when he was 18 years old. And this just left him completely paralyzed from the chest down. And what these researchers have done now is they've installed this chip on the left side of his brain, and this guy who's now 24 lets him use his hands, his fingers, to perform really simple tasks that you and I take for granted. Things like picking up a cup, a handle on a mug, swiping a credit card. This video is absolutely incredible. And on top of that, it's noteworthy in the gaming world because they're researching how he's able to develop his motor skills with a Guitar Hero controller. And he's playing it surprisingly well. We'll have the video in the show notes, so check out that link. It's really, really inspiring stuff. I feel like it's super hopeful for the people who are disabled by accidents. As abled people, we really take a lot of stuff for granted. Introducing things like video games in a study-based research like this in neuroscience is a really cool thing for us to see.
Absolutely. And it seems like there are a lot of plastic instrument controllers out there, and they seem to be very cheap to acquire, which I think would be a huge help for research projects. It's really great to see Guitar Hero controllers doing the world some good. So GG to the neuroscientists behind a paralysis study at the Feinstein Institute for Medical Research for really using Guitar Hero controllers and a brain implant to help patients with these kinds of conditions, with quadriplegia, help regain some autonomy.
Wonderful stuff. Let's wrap it up. Let's go to the bonus stage.
Yeah, let's do it. A man who bought an old Neo Geo test board for $750 discovered that on it was a prototype version of an unreleased Neo Geo fighting game. He brought it to the Midwest Gaming Classic convention to show it off, and the game has no UI or sound, but there are 12 fighters, background art, and some semblance of a playable video game.
You can't even tell if it's an SNK game, who we all know is the only developer with decent Neo Geo games back in the day. Really interesting stuff. The surprise farming simulator hit Stardew Valley has sold over 1 million copies on PC, according to its publisher Chucklefish Games. That makes it one of Steam's biggest releases of 2016 thus far.
Man, Stardew Valley is really fantastic. What an achievement for this style of game. One of the better games this year so far. Pokemon fans this week will be able to purchase some interesting Pikachu-themed items from Japanese brand Yummy Mart. They're making an officially licensed line of lingerie inspired by the electric-type mascot, including a set of pajamas and a set of lace Pikachu-themed bikinis.
The Polygon headline for this is, there is now a Pokemon lingerie collection so everyone can get a Pikachu. Get it? I don't think you got it. There's a new world record for beating Super Mario Bros. 1. Speedrunner Darbian shaved off milliseconds at 4 minutes, 57 seconds, and 260 milliseconds, about 200 milliseconds faster than his own previous record. And it may be the fastest possible time that a human can ever achieve.
Not tool-assisted either. This is so legit. One of the more inspiring speedruns I've ever seen.
All right, that's it. If you liked our show, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. And check us out on Google Play Music now. Please let us know what you think of our show.
All of our episodes can also be heard on our site, which is 1pvs2p.com. You can also subscribe by searching for our show on your favorite podcast app or by using our site's RSS feed. All of our sources for this week's stories have been posted at the link in the show notes.
Like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. We're very active there at 1pvs2p_podcast. As always, we want to thank Phonetic Hero for the use of his songs for our show, Coffee Stomp, and Super Manly Brothers X. Both of them are part of the compilation project Chiptunes = Win. One last thing, if you want to be on our show, go to our website, 1pvs2p.com/contact us, or click at the top of the homepage on the Contact Us link to find out how you can be on our very own podcast.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you next week.